Ready to Love decides to add four additional people, even though they portrayed the idea that maybe they're going to do a less is more approach. And with that, I would say two of them definitely have a chance of making it to the end. One probably is going to get eliminated in the next opportunity they can get rid of that person. And the fourth one, it's still too early to say. So, when it comes to these new people, we have Cynthia, Mark Anthony, Jonique, and also Fabrice. Of the four, Mark Anthony comes in as well liked, but he does ruffle a feather or two. Or rather, someone else ruffles his feathers, and that's in the form of Corvea, who, with her talking about being provided for, treated like a queen and all that type of stuff, and making it seem like she wants to be the prize and the other guy's just lucky to have her, that rubs Mark Anthony the wrong way. But luckily for him, when it comes to Mercedes, with him currently being in the nursing and medical field, yet wanting to become a pilot, and her being a flight attendant, them being in the same industry is something that they connect with and may take them all the way to the end to being one of the final three couples. Following him, we have to bring up Cynthia because she may have something going on. Granted, it's with Andre, who's very much a big time flirt and uses his charm a good portion of the ladies, but right now it seems that Cynthia may be one of his favorites alongside Jeffrey, but Jeffrey might become a backup plan for him. It's hard to say, it's still very early. Following those two, well, rather three if you think about it, there's Jonique, who I think one of the issues Jonique may have is that she. Cynthia and Jonique end up on the same group date with the men, and while Cynthia seems very open to the process in terms of dating men, no matter what kind of tight skin tone or whatever, Jonique is a little bit more structured, not to the point of Corvea where it's like you need to have this, that, and the third if you even want to step to me, but Jonique is definitely someone who has her preferences, may or may not go for something outside of that, and with that in mind, it's really hard to say whether or not she may find a match, even though Tony is rather a gentleman to her, and after the group date, he does walk her to her car. But considering that Tony just added Marsha to his, I don't want to call it a roster, but considering that Tony has definitely added Marsha to one of the people he's interested in alongside Morgan, there's a question of whether or not Jonique can really handle being a third, never mind whether or not Tony's even looking for a third person to be interested in. Because with his journey of faith coinciding with his journey for a relationship, I don't know if his faith is going to really open him up to the idea of dating three women at once, especially considering Morgan and him are already deeply in tune when it comes to religion. And when it comes to Marsha, she's interested, she appreciates it, but I don't know how that may go. And for Tony, it may be a case of you have someone that's like really like in there with me, someone who is interested enough but not heavy into it, so maybe that may open up to other things. So adding a third to that I think could be too much for him, or else maybe not something he wants to do because that's a lot of emotions to juggle. But that is everybody that has something decent or good going on. On the flip side, you have people like Z who, after being the bottom two, pretty much shut down and make it so that all these insecurities, all these questions about why I was in the bottom two only make things worse for her. And of course, what doesn't help is that Blake is someone she goes on a solo date with, and with him wanting her to open up but not, provide some type of reciprocity, it just makes things worse for her, especially as he goes back to the group and, I won't say trashes her, but definitely doesn't give her the grace that she needs so that the guys understand the process is not for everybody. It can be very difficult early on when you don't really have a chance to get comfortable. Which leaves one more person, and that's Fabrice, who's part of the new group. And simply put, while he has a lot going for him because he worked for Giorgio Armani as one of his first jobs, and he seems to be deep into the fashion industry, even went to France, I think even specifically Paris, learned the language and everything, The man is also a horn dog. He has all these interesting things about him, but the topic always comes back around to sex. And while some, like Sue-Ann, can appreciate the conversation because she's on her own journey in terms of sexual discovery and things like that, a lot of the women think it's a little bit too soon, it's a little bit too much, and this could potentially lead to him ending up in the bottom two in the future. So, as for who gets eliminated this episode, the bottom two are Corbeia and Z. Z's in the bottom two because her insecurities and focusing mostly on why she was in the bottom two in the first episode turn off most of the guys. And then when it comes to Corbeia, continuing to be the kind of woman who is a bit too high maintenance for most of the guys, they consider her someone who needs to be put in the bottom two. But between Corbeia knowing what she wants and deserves, and Z being very awkward and also still holding that homie vibe, they get rid of Z and they keep Corbeia for another day. So when it comes to highlights, I want to say that there is the potential for some final three couples here. Granted, everything is still very much superficial, like Demario and Corbeia having a similar interest in fashion, or Mercedes and Mark Anthony having a similar interest in flight, but you never know. We haven't really seen someone like Tony who's brought their faith into the show and really connected with someone through that, especially to the level that he does in terms of praying and everything. So maybe between Morgan and Marsha, he could end up with somebody. Heck, who knows? Jeffrey and Blake seem to have an understanding similar to how Demario and Corbeia may have an understanding. So maybe those people who you may not think can make it to the end end up together just because, while nobody else wanted them, they like each other to the point where it doesn't matter. Plus, when you consider that way, Tommy brings up this whole potential game changer where if all the men agree, and I'm assuming all the women agree if they ever had the opportunity, they can save one person from elimination. So who knows? One of the guys may decide to really put up a case for one of the ladies, or one of the ladies put up a case for one of the guys. And with that, somebody who we may think should or may need to get kicked gets saved and ends up coming to the final three with the person that they wanted all along. For the last topic, it's just hoping that when it comes to the producer segments, when they speak one-on-one with cast members, that Andre and Corbeia don't continue to dominate the conversations, because as much as I get Andre dominating them because he's very charismatic and personable, Corbeia only really has one person that seems to be interested in her, so it seems kind of weird for her to get so much screen time. And granted, I don't know, maybe all the segments done with Sue-Ann, Morgan, Marsha, and the rest, maybe it's not as interesting as what she gives, but I feel like we need to get different walks of life and their takes on not only what's going on in the show, but also what has happened in their life that brought them to the show in terms of their dating history, what they're looking for in the future, and also where they're flexible in, so that we can, granted for fun, kind of piece together who they might be with, since as much as Ready to Love is supposed to be a dating show, which is supposed to really get these people together with somebody, it's also a reality competition, and it's a reality TV, which means it's more so focused on entertainment than really helping the people on the show. So I'm hoping we get a better balance so that you really get to understand that these are real people and not just different cast members made into characters that the producers and editors play with in order to push a narrative. In terms of who we think is going to be in the bottom two, when it comes to the men, Blake, I think, never really recovered from his comments in the first episode, so he's probably going to be back in the bottom two. And with Fabrice not really taking advantage of his experience traveling throughout the world and being in fashion and just keep focusing on what he likes sexually, that could potentially tank him. And between the two, I'm leaning more toward Fabrice getting kicked, but that's really dependent on what Blake says, because between the new guy and a guy who's already established that he can be kind of combative and, of course, also doesn't want kids, it's gonna be, I don't know. Fabrice has quickly made it his way to the bottom two, but Blake has been holding position, so between the two it's gonna be a very tight vote for who gets to go or who gets to stay. As for the women, it's kind of hard to say offhand. I mean, a part of me still wants to say Sue-Ann just because they're really not showing that she's connecting with anybody. I mean, she had a little moment with Fabrice over sex, but that doesn't mean she's gonna approach him or he's gonna approach her. And then when it comes to the second person we're thinking, it might be Jonique. And I mainly say that because I feel that with Cynthia and Jonique coming in at the same time, and Cynthia seeming much more open to the possibility of dating anybody, and Jonique being a bit more structured in what she wants, sort of like Corvea, but not focusing so much on the financial aspect, that could possibly bring it to the bottom two. Though, speaking of Corvea, if she doesn't take the note that London, I can't remember this person's name for the life of me. Either way, if she doesn't take the note that he gave and like focus on other things that could potentially make her match with somebody and not just honing so much on what they financially have or don't have, that could put her back in the bottom two and possibly get her eliminated. And who knows if Demario may try to convince the guys to use that one last chance save on her, considering nobody else seems to be really interested or talking to her like he is, or at least as you assume he is.